Robert Mohr was the Gestapo officer who interrogated Sophie Scholl, part of the White Rose resistance movement based in Munich. He is not to be confused with another Robert Mohr, a lawyer who took part in mass murders in Ukraine as part of Einsatzgruppe 6 in 1941-42 before becoming head of the Gestapo in Darmstadt. He should also not be confused with Peter Mohr, who spent time at the Munich Criminal Police and Gestapo, and who later provided information to British authorities on the murder of 2 South African Air Force pilots by the Munich Gestapo in March 1944 in the aftermath of the Great Escape. The Robert Mohr, who is the subject of this presentation, spent 3 days questioning Sophie Scholl from the 18th to 20th of February 1943. Like the Gestapo officer who arrested the family of Anne Frank, Robert Mohr has been treated very well by history. I think that the 2005 film Sophie Scholl, The Final Days, probably portrays him very accurately, although of course the filmmakers had the benefit of access to the interrogation protocols, which had only been found after the fall of East Germany and thus had been denied to earlier filmmakers and researchers. This poster comes from that film, and owing to the lack of original photographs, other photographs from the film will be used in this presentation. I think it fair to say that a large part of the film deals with the relationship between Sophie Scholl and Robert Mohr. If you're interested, I will leave a link to the film below, of course assuming that the link is still active, but the film really is very good and I thoroughly recommend it. To a large extent, his memory was enhanced by his post-war relationship with the Scholl family, but his account of what happened is backed up by other sources, including the aforementioned interrogation record, which turned up long after his death. To say that Robert Mohr was a good Gestapo officer is going perhaps a little bit too far, but it does demonstrate that things are not just black and white, but in several shades of grey. Robert Mohr was born on the 5th of April 1897 in the village of Bisterschied. Bisterschied is located in the hills of the North Palatinate between Kaiserslautern and Bad Kreuznach. It was then in Bavaria. I know it seems a little bit odd, but this was an exclave of Bavaria. Today it's in the state of Rhineland Palatinate, which was created after World War II. The father of Robert Mohr was a master bricklayer. One of 9 children, Mohr had 5 brothers and 3 sisters. The plan for Robert Mohr was that he should be a tailor. However, when he was only 17 years old, World War I broke out. He served in the army throughout the war and was awarded the Iron Cross second class for bravery. He was lucky enough to come out of the conflict unharmed. On the 11th of May 1919 he was demobilised, and on the 1st of October he joined the Bavarian gendarmerie. On the 27th of June 1923 he married Martha Klein, a farmer's daughter from his home village of Bisterschied. A year later his son Willi was born. You can see them in this photograph, which dates to around the time of the investigations into the White Rose. In 1933 he joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party, membership number 3271936. This does not necessarily indicate that he believed in the party. For many this was just a career move, or in some cases a necessary part of hanging on to their jobs. However, he did join various National Socialist associations. He joined the Motor Corps, the People's Welfare Organization, the Reich Association of German Civil Servants, the Reich Air Protection Association, and the Colonial Association. This shows more interest in the system than would normally be expected. However, it didn't do his career any harm. Mohr became Chief of Police in Frankenthal, a town then of around 20,000 people. In 1938 he switched to the Gestapo. Whether voluntary or not, I don't know. Police officers could be rotated into the Gestapo. He was transferred to Munich.
Stalingrad. Die einstige Wolga-Metropole ist zu einer toten Stadt geworden. Sie ist bis auf einige kleine Bezirke an der Wolga dem Feind entrissen. Überall in den Straßen eroberte Bunker und Barrikaden. zerstörte Geschützstellungen und Panzer. Ein Transportzug mit halbfertigen Panzerkampfwagen. Sie konnten nicht mehr abtransportiert werden.
Whilst the panzers were on their way to disaster in Stalingrad in the east, the Munich Gestapo started to receive duplicated flyers with the heading "The White Rose." The sheets comprised of 2 typewritten pages and were addressed to various people in the intellectual elite of the Third Reich. The Munich Gestapo was assigned with the task of finding out where these flyers came from. The evidence suggested that they originated in Munich, but the investigation was initially fruitless. As the German 6th Army lay dying in Stalingrad, around 8,000 to 10,000 duplicated leaflets were found in housing blocks and on the pavement. The theme was Stalingrad and the message was anti-Nazi and anti-war. The objective was to end an already lost war. As Munich was without doubt the capital of the Nazi movement, it was after all where the party had been founded, such resistance was considered especially dangerous by the regime. Sometime around 11 in the morning of the 18th of February 1943, Mohr was asked by telephone at his desk in the Munich Gestapo, the Wittelsbacher Palace, to report to his boss, Oberregierungsrat Oswald Schäfer. An Oberregierungsrat is a senior government councillor. Oswald Schäfer was at his desk behind a pile of these leaflets. Mohr was ordered to drop whatever he was doing and to find those responsible for the leaflets. Almost at the same time, large numbers of leaflets with a similar or even the same content appeared in the mail in Stuttgart, Augsburg, Vienna, Salzburg and Innsbruck. As the mail was posted to addresses in these cities, but hand-delivered in Munich, it appeared even more obvious that this was where the resistance group was. Up until then, the Gestapo had been able to determine that the envelopes were manufactured in Munich and the paper had been purchased there. The 8 Pfennig stamps had been purchased by one person from the post office on Ludwigstrasse in Munich. The counter-clerk had been able to provide a description. The authors had clearly studied at university, and the addresses of the leaflets sent out in Munich and the surrounding area were taken from a university student directory. On the morning of the 18th of February 1943, there was a call from Munich University that a large number of leaflets had been thrown down from the balustrade of the atrium and that 2 people were being held there, suspected as being the propagators. Mohr went to the university where he saw more of the leaflets that had been seen on Schäfer's desk. A university official called Schmidt claimed to have seen the 2 near the dropping point. There were 2 young people being held there who identified themselves as being the siblings, Sophie and Hans Scholl, by showing their student ID cards. Both were taken to the Gestapo by motor vehicle and questioned separately. Mohr questioned Sophie Scholl. At first, Sophie Scholl denied having anything to do with the leaflets. She was on her way to the train station with her brother and popped into the university to see a friend. They had an empty suitcase to pick up some laundry from their parents' home in Ulm. Mohr believed her story, as did Reich student leader Scholl, who was asked to talk to her. Mohr told her that she would be released that very day. However, the Gestapo did a search of Hans Scholl's room and found hundreds of 8 Pfennig stamps and the draft of a handwritten leaflet. This made it appear that he was responsible for the leaflets. When informed, Sophie Scholl tried to take all the blame for herself. Her brother also tried to take the blame to save his sister. Thus, both tried to save the other. Now, both siblings said that their aim was to prevent an even greater disaster for Germany and perhaps do their part in saving the lives of German soldiers and people. Mohr said that her attitude was one of when the fortune or misfortune of a great people is at stake, no means or sacrifice is too great to offer joyfully their own lives. Sophie and Hans Scholl were convinced to the last that their sacrifice was not in vain. Mohr was impressed by the siblings and said that the others were too. As a result, he said that they were treated very well. Mohr added that one of his colleagues stated that, with Hans Scholl, I encountered an intelligence that was almost alien to me. I regret that I can't do anything for him given the situation. The colleague even suggested that Hans Scholl had the making of a people's leader, such as might be needed in the future. Finally, he added the comment that it was terrible that such people had to die. Mohr tried to persuade Sophie Scholl to say that she did not agree with her brother, but she refused. Mohr was under pressure from Berlin to finish the investigation. On the 21st of February 1943, Roland Freisler travelled to Munich from the Reich capital and wanted the files given to him. Mohr was summoned to the court hearings scheduled for 10 in the morning of the 22nd of February 1943 in the People's Court in Munich. As the accused had already fully confessed, no witnesses were required. As was his customary practice, Freisler screamed abuse at them and then sentenced them to death very quickly. That afternoon, between 1400 and 1500 hours, Mohr went to the prison in Stadelheim where he met the parents of the Scholl siblings for the first time. As he walked down the prison corridor on his way to Sophie Scholl, he passed Hans Scholl, who was probably being led to his cell by a guard from the visiting room. Hans Scholl came up to him, shook his hand and said that he just told his parents to thank him for treating his sister so well, that he was now glad to be able to thank Mohr personally. Mohr said that he was so touched that he couldn't say a word, or maybe said something like, "Be strong now too." He couldn't remember, he was so taken aback. Sophie Scholl was in a cell crying. She apologised for her tears, saying, "I just said goodbye to my parents and you'll understand." Mohr said a few words to her and left. The Scholls were executed shortly afterwards. Nazi Germany had introduced Sippenhaft, that is to say the arrest of family members of those opposed to the regime. According to this order, the next of kin of those arrested were to be sent to a concentration camp. As part of this order, the Scholl parents were also arrested in Ulm. Mohr went to the prison in Ulm, where he had Robert Scholl brought in for interrogation. He assumed that Robert Scholl had no idea of what was going on in Munich. Mohr wanted to get Robert Scholl to say that he did not agree with the opinions of his children. However, Robert Scholl told him what he thought of the Nazis in no uncertain terms. Scholl did not add to his report the political opinions of Robert Scholl and just wrote that he had had no knowledge of what his children were doing. In doing this, Mohr probably saved Robert Scholl's life. After completing the investigation into the White Rose, Mohr was sent to do a course at the Higher Police School in Berlin. Mohr became head of the Gestapo and the criminal police in Mulhouse in Alsace in occupied France. In the aftermath of the Franco-Prussian War of 1871, Mulhouse had been annexed to the newly created German Reich, that is to say, the Second Reich. After World War I, it had been returned to France. Following the armistice with France in 1940, it had once more been annexed to the Reich, this time the Third Reich. A former communist member of the French Parliament, Jean-Pierre Mohr, was chosen to be the Kreisleiter. A Kreisleiter was an administrative rank within the National Socialist structure between Gauleiter and Ortsgruppenleiter. Nazi Germany was divided into 40 provinces, more or less, depends when we're talking about, because it did change, but each had its own Gauleiter, and each Gau had a number of people who had the job of Kreisleiter. When World War II started, there were 813 people acting as Kreisleiter. On this map, you can see what the individual Kreis looked like in this part of Germany. The Gestapo had objected to the appointment of Jean-Pierre Mohr due to his former political allegiance, but with the Nazis and Soviets allied at this time, they had been overruled. Following the invasion of the Soviet Union, Mohr kept his job. After the war, Mohr was arrested by the Americans in Germany, extradited to France where he was tried, found guilty of treason on the 28th of February 1947 and executed on the 10th of June 1947 by firing squad. The headquarters of the Gestapo were in the Lefebvre barracks of Mulhouse. I have gone through what records I can find of the Gestapo in Alsace, but cannot find anything relating to criminal activity which Robert Mohr might have been involved in. Of course, should anything later turn up, then I will revise this video.
Moving north from the Swiss border, troops of the French First Army move into Mühlhausen, 10 miles from the Rhine, at the southern end of the Western Front. In 1 month of fighting, 50,000 prisoners have been taken in the new Allied offensive. Evacuated citizens of the town return to their homes. German occupation and forced labor are at an end.
On the 27th of November 1944, the Americans captured Mulhouse. The last resistance in the town was at the Gestapo headquarters, and this photograph purports to show as much. Before the end of the war, he fled to Freiburg and then to his original family home in Bisterschied. The village was in the French occupation zone of Germany. In 1947, he was interned by the French in relation to his work at Mulhouse, but as nothing against him was discovered, he was released a year later. He did not return to the police, but instead got a job with the Spa administration in Bad Kreuznach and was a lifeguard there. Whilst he was in French captivity, he started to correspond with Robert Scholl, probably seeking a witness for his behaviour at Gestapo headquarters. Robert Scholl requested that he write down what he remembered of the last days of his daughter. Part of this presentation I'm doing right now is based on the recollections of what he wrote in February 1951 and published in the 1951 book by Inga Scholl, sister of the executed siblings. The book was called The White Rose. Robert Scholl was very grateful and even sent him 10 marks for his bother. Mohr must have had financial difficulties, and Robert Scholl arranged for him to have a job with a friend of his who was a notary in Ulm. Without a doubt, Mohr has presented himself as advantageously as possible. However, it appears that the Scholl family accepted what he said. Sophie Scholl shared a cell with Else Gebel, and she backs up Mohr's recollections, as does the interrogation protocol, which turned up long after Mohr's death. At the time of the release of the 2005 film Sophie Scholl, The Last Days, the German magazine Der Spiegel interviewed with Willi Mohr, the son of the Gestapo official. Willi stated that his father considered women to be apolitical from the outset and initially really believed that Sophie was just doing what her brother wanted. He said that he was sure his father wanted to save her and was very disappointed that she turned down his offer. Willi Mohr said that his father never expressed any criticism of the regime. The son, who was then serving in the Wehrmacht on the Eastern Front, said that Germany could not win the war. "Don't say that to other people," his father warned. The son noted that his father may not have agreed, but he didn't contradict him either. Notwithstanding any financial difficulties that Robert Mohr might have had after his release from captivity, he got a good pension when the time came. Although he had only held the rank of criminal inspector when the Nazi regime collapsed, Robert Mohr received the pension of a senior criminal inspector. It was assumed that if his career had continued, he would have been promoted at least once had the Third Reich not collapsed. His work with the Gestapo was never the subject of any legal proceedings or investigation. In a future video, I will explain in more detail how pensions worked in West Germany for those that had had official positions in Nazi Germany. However, in short, the pension was based on the rank that the person was assumed to have had their career continued. Finally, I would like to say a few words about Oswald Schäfer, who was Mohr's boss at the Munich Gestapo. Schäfer was 11 years younger than Mohr, but he'd studied law at university, thus propelling his career. He had also headed Einsatzkommando 9 of Einsatzgruppe B, operating in what is today Belarus and the Vyazma district of Russia. According to his own reports, which have survived, between the 21st of September 1941 and the 19th of December 1941, 4,090 people were murdered by this unit. Schäfer was replaced as head of Einsatzkommando 9 of Einsatzgruppe B in February 1942. Schäfer was appointed head of the Munich Gestapo Control Center by the Reich Security Main Office RSHA in March 1942 and held this position until 1945. I don't know what the relationship between the two was like, nor if they talked about what was happening in the East. Of course, what was happening in the East was theoretically top secret. However, Schäfer's hands were steeped in blood. Schäfer had directly ordered mass murder and may even have directly participated in it, a rule that had been set by his predecessor that all officers in the unit had to share equal responsibility. Presumably, Schäfer saw his job in Munich not only on cracking down on the enemies of the regime, such as the White Rose, but also on any Jews who were still in Munich. In the 1950s, an investigation on criminal proceedings for aiding and abetting manslaughter were initiated against Schäfer and Richard Lebküchner. Lebküchner was the former head of Department 2E, that's the General Work Department of the Munich Gestapo. A trial was held before the Munich I Regional Court. The subject of the proceedings was an application to the Reich Security Main Office RSHA to give special treatment to at least 20 Eastern workers arrested by the Munich Gestapo for various crimes. Now, special treatment, of course, means murder. It also referred to the beating of 60 to 70 Eastern workers by ordering what was called then short treatment, that is to say corporal punishment of up to 75 strokes of the cane. However, the allegations could not be proven with sufficient certainty for both defendants, so they were acquitted. The public prosecutor's appeal was rejected by the Federal Court of Justice. If people were being tortured and murdered at the Munich Gestapo, I think it's likely that Mohr would have known about it. Of course, I can't prove that, and maybe he didn't. Nonetheless, he was never called either as a witness nor as the accused. I'll do a separate video on Schäfer and the mystery relating to his sister's wealth, which was not inconsiderable, and her murder, which happened in Sanremo in Italy in 2001. It's a very interesting story. I'm surprised that a film hasn't been made of it. Robert Mohr died on the 5th of February 1977 in Ludwigshafen am Rhein, aged 79. Curiously enough, his namesake at the Darmstadt Gestapo would also die at the same age. I realise that this video has presented Robert Mohr, a Gestapo officer, in a quite positive light. Now, the sources are the following. If you go to the Berlin Document Center, you've got the party files in the former archive of the National Socialist Workers' Party. You've got the report to Robert Scholl, which Mohr wrote himself, and that can be found in the Institute for Contemporary History in Munich. And of course, there is the book by Inga Scholl, the sister of the Scholl siblings, called The White Rose, which was published in Frankfurt in 1951. So when you put those together, then the somewhat positive behavior that we see in the film Sophie Scholl, The Last Days, does come out quite strongly. I do suggest that you have a look at this film, because in my opinion it is pretty accurate as from a historical standpoint, as are just about all German films for that matter. I'll leave a link below to the video if it is available. If it's one which is only in German, then I apologize for not being able to put it up in English as well, but I think I've got access to an English language version, and the link will be below. If the link is dead, then it might have become dead by the time you got round to seeing the video. So for the moment, thank you very much for listening to this. I upload every Friday at 2000 hours. I sometimes upload at other times as well. I do around 120 videos a year, so you can see I am uploading at other times as well. I travel extensively in Germany and Poland. Above all, I live in a motorhome, which allows me to get around to see these places. So if you're interested in research-based history, then you might want to subscribe. But for the moment, all the best from me. Thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.